Hey, Richard Mellor here again with Facts for Working People. I just want to make a few comments. I haven't done this for a while because Apple have, or Adobe or whatever, upgraded iMovie and now I can't figure out how to operate it again. I'm not a great techie. But anyway, one of the things I wanted to talk about was just the trade unions where I spent most of my political life. And I've been to a number of picket lines over the last 6 months or 8 months. And there have been some strikes over the last 6 or 8 months. And the interesting thing, like I went out to one in Pittsburgh, California here over the winter, where they were on last winter, where they were on strike. They made some parts for Boeing also. It was machinists, and I went out of that picket line, and it was the same old stuff. Took coffee and donuts, standing outside there, not preventing, stopping production in any way, not halting people going in. I'm cautious about the word scabs these days, but that's another issue I want to talk about. So they're out there for 12 weeks in Christmas time. What a miserable thing. And I talked with them on the picket line, and it's the usual thing. They don't know really what's going on. There were a couple of times they were stopping people coming in. They were getting a little aggressive. The union officials came out because the boss complained to the cops. They came over. The union officials go, "Don't do that. They'll get an injunction. They'll do this." They're very good. The union bureaucracy, the union hierarchy is at telling us what not to do. So you had that strike. I actually don't know how it ended up. I like going on picket lines because the consciousness of workers is in a different state when you're on a picket line. And but what made me think about it was I was on a picket line this week, some restaurant workers, and I was talking to them, and it's nothing much has changed. You get the same situation. They're out there. They're really not strikes. What they are 24-hour protests. And they are initially people get out. Like there was a restaurant strike some years ago. It was over in San Francisco. They'd put tape up along the sidewalk of the hotel, next to the hotel, and it stopped at the doorway to the hotel so people could go in and out. And then it continued on the other side or whatever. And I started to picket, and me and a couple of others, in front of the door. A security came out and said we couldn't do this. And we said, well, yes, we can do this. It's a First Amendment right. And they said, well, we have an agreement with the police and the union not to impede the people coming in. And I remember saying, well, I'm not part of that agreement. And that's what they'd done, so that they didn't bring the heat down on them. In other words, many of these people were immigrants, and I talked with some of them, and new immigrants, and they thought it was illegal for them to do that. And I said, no, your union has given up that right to actually picket on a public sidewalk like that in a deal. So, you know, you get out there, people get out there, they feel strong, they feel for the first week or so, but after 4, 5, 6 weeks on a picket line, and you're not stopping anything, you're eating your donuts, the cops are there to make sure nothing happens that can hurt the employer, and that's it. And it's demoralizing. We haven't won any serious strikes, for years that way. It's going to be a complete failure. And so I was on this picket line the other day, and I'm talking to these workers, and I was talking to them a little bit about the structure of the union, the AFL-CIO. These were immigrant workers, most of them. And of course, they don't know about any of that stuff. And then I began to talk to them a little bit about what the Central Labour Council is, and these union organisations, these union structures, the National AFL-CIO, how that formed, it became the AFL-CIO, the district councils that are in between, the central labour bodies, the county labour bodies, and the state labour bodies. And I talked to a couple of them, and I said, look, in California, there's 2 million workers affiliated to the State Federation of Labour. There's 800,000 workers in this at Los Angeles affiliated to the Los Angeles Central Labour Council or Los Angeles Labour Council. And this is one of the top economies in the world, that city. And so they just knew nothing about any of this. And of course they said, well, they don't tell us any of this. And I said, exactly, they don't tell you any of that. And it's like when the union officialdom, the present union leadership that we have today to a T, who all agree with the team concept, the view that employers and workers have the same interests. None of them, they'll all say, we want you down at the union hall, but they don't want you if you disagree with them. They don't want you if you're going to challenge their strategies and their policies. And so consequently, we are in this what we say, the trade union leadership has a, they have a great way of expressing defeats as victories. They call it sometimes even strategic retreat. Their entire policy is retreat. And so we've not won anything. And if you look just recently, you had a crane operator strike. It was more than crane operators, but up in Western Washington, there was quite a strike among crane operators and other people in that industry. We've had the Teamster strike that was voted down, but because of a contractual little loophole, the union officialdom has imposed it. They've gone back to make some little chatters and little deals here and there on side agreements. I've been in negotiations, so I know about that. And so that's gone on. We had an article on our blog about that and about the different methods that ourselves, and I'm speaking here for myself, and people that are like around labour notes, the TDU, the difference in the approach that we have. And so you had the Teamsters, huge corporation, UPS, major corporation. We had the crane operators up there. Those are those huge cranes. You got the docks here. We've had, here we had about a year and a half, 2 years ago, the oil refineries, where they could have struck 65, they struck 9 of them to make sure that they didn't hurt the employer. Same thing. I went out to Pittsburgh here, California, guys sitting there, donuts, just for weeks on end. It's impossible. When I went out to that one in Pittsburgh, I started to talk to the guys there and told them, the Contra Costa Labor Council has about 80,000 members. The first thing the worker said to me, the guy in the picket line, regular dues paying member, he said to me, why can't we get them out? And it's a great question. The union officialdom is terrified of getting them out. The union officialdom, if you take these strikes, right now we got the hotel strike, we got the Marriott, we got the Teamster strike. There've been a number of strikes where if we'd have come together, we belong to national organisation. What's the point of belonging to a national organisation if you don't bring that power of that organisation to bear on every individual struggle? The bosses do. You get a strike with any strike that looks like it's getting out of hand. They get an injunction. They bring the police. They use the mass media. Look at the Boeing strike a few years ago. They threatened to move. That's economic terrorism. They threatened to move if they didn't back off. We'll go down south to non-union, or we'll go abroad. It would have been down south, which I think they've done. This is after they've given the company all sorts of concessions and taxpayer money. So we just cannot win. Even if you're up against a hotel chain like Marriott or like the Hilton, this is a global corporation. We have power here. But they leave every local to fight alone. The policies of defensive, concessionary policies of the trade union officialdom. Now, I'm raising this because it's every worker knows that they have to struggle against the boss in one way or another. The question is, what's much more complicated is the struggle we have to have against our own leadership in the trade union movement. The trade union leadership today is bankrupt ideologically. Many workers will say to you, and I was a delegate to my Central Labour Council for 12 years, many will say, well, they're corrupt. I'd meet guys on the streets. I worked in the streets, and I'd meet the City of Oakland guys. And they'd tell me, our guys are corrupt. They're taking money from the boss. I say, I know him. He's in the Labour Council. I can't say there was any corruption of that form in the Labour Council. I never witnessed it. I know it goes on. The Teamster leader here was busted for making deals with the bosses, but not that there's not corruption in the unions of that type of criminal activity. The main problem is the union leadership is bankrupt ideologically. They don't see an alternative to capitalism. They do not see an alternative to the boss owning the factories, owning the means of production, owning the workplace. They don't see an alternative to that. Profits and that is sacrosanct. So consequently, that even the history of the trade union movement is littered with people of good intentions that start off for the right reasons and end up betraying people. That betrayal comes from the fact that they have no alternative to the present system. The boss says, well, I can't make money, I'm losing profits. If you try to do this like they did in the Boeing strike, if you do this, I'm going to move to South Carolina. The position is, We take over the plant. We nationalise the industry. The workers take over the business. Workers take over the corporation. In fact, Shama Sawant, to her credit, raised that during that Boeing strike. That's the answer to that. We don't give them the right to bankrupt a community, to destroy a community. Before the Rodney King riots, uprising there, which was sparked off by that police abuse. But the industries have pulled out McDonnell Douglas, all of this, where you're talking about third world conditions that existed in that time. So to me, this is the key question. Now, to get back to people like Labour Notes and TDU, I was an official in my local guy, never got paid money. I wasn't hired by a union or anything like that. And I know the pressure you come under. And so the thing is that what you come under that pressure, and you have an option. You either back off this pressure of your members. You have an alternative strategy that can build an opposition to the bosses that you're fighting immediately and within the community and within the nation. In other words, you have a strategy that's beyond my own immediate wages and hours, and or you quit. And plenty of good people quit. This is the major problem. And I watched that Labour Notes and had a panel on the Teamster strike. We had a piece about it on the blog, and it had two Labour Notes people and a couple of TDU people who were sort of linked to Labour Notes. And to be honest with you, it was disgusting. I mean, these people consider themselves to be an advanced section of the working class, if you like. They are leaders within they have something to offer the rank and file worker. And I know Labour Notes does put on good conferences. They're good organisers. They get good people at their conference. But there was nothing on that panel, and I'm going to try and put a link to that on Facebook. It's a 45-minute. They had two rank and file Teamsters. There was nothing there, even though it was building the labour movement and going forward. There was nothing there to offer the rank and file worker that would show that we do have power, and here's how we organise that power. And what has occurred that can show us the way, apart from our own history. And many workers, we don't read our own history. Our history's been hidden. What shows us the way forward? The teacher struggles. I don't know if any of you have seen those teacher struggles on our blog. An interview with three of the teachers from different states, West Virginia, Kentucky, and Arizona. In West Virginia, for 40 years I've been told you can't strike in a right-to-work state. And then not only that, it's a Republican state. What did they do in West Virginia? Not only did they strike against the wishes of the union officials, they struck in a state that it was illegal to strike, and they won a raise increase. They were offered 1%, if I'm right. They won a 5% raise increase for themselves, wage increase for themselves, and 5% for every other worker in the state, working in a state employee. If there's ever a reason to join a union, that's it. Not free credit cards, not you get movies made in the post, not all the crap that they offer workers, as opposed to increasing their living standards and material well-being. They won an increase in their material conditions. That's how you build. Kentucky was very similar. Oklahoma and the other ones. In Kentucky, there was one weakness. There was an issue around the question of a gang ordinance in a community. Some of the black teachers and black parents wanted that included in some strategy that was built also around the teachers and their workplaces and everything else, and that was rejected. It's a common weakness because of the present leadership of not linking up with the communities, with other workers, with non-union workers. And I'll put these videos up again, but in Arizona, they also show that and I think this was true in all of these strikes and actions, was that anybody in teaching could belong. Anybody could come to a meeting, whether you were charter school, whether you were in the cook, whether you were a gardener, everybody was there. And the reason these took place were because of the relative weakness of the union hierarchy, which is a stifling obstacle to the power of the organised labour making headway in this country, not just through industrial disputes, but also in the building of a party of our own and running candidates of our own, working people in general. That should. Look, when I went on this picket line a few days ago, I talked to that about some of these restaurant workers about West Virginia, about the teachers. Never heard of it. You can talk to a lot of people, including teachers, that they've heard of it, but they don't know the details. And the reason they don't know the details, the boss won't bring it to them, the mass media won't bring it to them, and the labor officialdom won't bring it to them, because they are terrified of their own members and of a movement of the working class that will place demands on them that will disrupt the relationship they have with the employers based on labour peace. And it's based on the view that there's no alternative. You can't just say there's plenty of people that are dedicated and that are decent people. In the lower level, there's some good people in locals and everything else. But the fight against their own members, as well as the boss, seems so daunting. But we cannot win without transforming our movement. We cannot win without openly having an open struggle with the present leadership of the trade union movement. They won't let you. If you claim to be I mean, that panel on the TDU and Labour Notes had, to be honest with you, I have nothing personal against any of them. I don't know them, although I know some here, and they were not they were not good. But I don't know these people. But I know they never offered anything. They're supposed to be, if you're going to put yourself forward to lead working people, vote for me, I'm going to get you a better way forward, or better conditions, then you'd better have a strategy for that. And you watch that panel. It's disgusting. One guy called in and said, "Can we have what about a national sick out?" And one of the TDU people said, "Well, the international wouldn't back that. It wouldn't." Well, of course they won't back it. They're imposing a contract on them that they'd voted against. So this is a major obstacle. The major obstacle outside of their bosses and the capitalism is the trade union officialdom, and it's the hardest battle in many ways to win. It's not because we're weak. It's not because every union official is taking money under the table. It's because their world view, their ideology, they accept the employer's ideology, they accept the rules, and you can't win that way. And that's why they won't make an issue. Every rank and file worker needs to know about what went on in West Virginia and everything else. But remember what I just said. It occurred in those Republican right-to-work states because the union bureaucracy was weaker. If that had been in California, they'd have crushed it. When I say crushed it, don't mean physical abuse. They would have blocked it off. They would have diverted it. I've seen it in San Francisco with unions. I've seen it for 30 years. Workers take a step, vote a contract down, begin to move, and they'll get it passed, just like the Teamsters have done here in this. And if you look, you've got right now the restaurant workers, Teamsters. We have those crane strikes. We've lots of disputes. They should be brought together into a movement, and we bring the power of labour and the community. And we have to have demands if we want the community involved. Bring that to bear. You're going to have to violate laws. You're going to have to break the laws. You have to take direct action. I'm not talking about individual violence or anything like that. We have the power, and there's no other way but that road. And so these are just a few quick things I wanted to say. I haven't done this in a while, and I just decided hell with it, So I'm going to try and put up this onto our blog, Facts for Working People. The URL of the blog is weknowwhatsup.blogspot.com. It's Richard Miller, Facts for Working People. All right, thanks a lot. Hope I made some sense to my fellow. I'm a retired trade unionist. I hope made some sense to my fellow workers in the trade union movement.